Are you one of the only on your job? Do you wonder why the same type of people continue getting promotions? Have you dreamed of getting to the top but don't know how? Welcome to C-CRETS, a podcast devoted to showcasing dilemmas faced by underrepresented employees in their quest to climb the career ladder. Your hosts, Keith Powell and Ricky Robinson, have experienced the corporate grind for more than 20 years. Now they want to share adventures, pitfalls, and C-suite secrets that they've learned along the way. So let's fill up those cups and get started.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, so I'm Ricky Robinson.
I'm Keith Powell. How you doing?
Hey, welcome to C-CRETS.
Yay, Ricky. What's going on? What's happening? What's on your mind this week?
I don't know, man. This is one of those weeks when I'm probably a little mentally tired or drained. I mean, thinking through stuff at work, personal stuff, this, that, and the other. So
There's
it's
always something going on.
It's one of them days, man.
One of those days.
So it's like a lot of external, static. That's what I'm thinking of. Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit? What do you mean by that when you say external static?
Well, I'm thinking when I think about external static, I mean, I think through many of us, whether that's from single parent households, if you're in one right now, if you got a job, you got to work two jobs, whatever it is, there's a lot of extra stuff that probably gets in the way that sometimes keep you from being able to deliver your best product. Mm-hmm. So you figure if you think about going back to when you're in college, some of our brethren, some of our classmates were able to go to school and not have to have a second job or not even have to have a job.
Sure.
They were able just to go and be a student. But some of us, we had to work 2-3 jobs to try to do it.
Got all these kinds of things going on in your life.
Had to still show up for class and still be able to do well or perform well on your exams. It doesn't really change when you get into the real world.
No, it don't. It don't. Not at all. Because all those things are still there. You still got family to deal with. You still got all this structural stuff that you got to deal with. Being a person of color or whatever it is.
So you think through just different examples, and as you and I were kind of talking about this stuff, offline at some point, you're thinking through some of you got, childcare, issues, and it's an issue because you have the decision that you need to make, right?
You got to make about it. You got to pay for it too.
Exactly. We got some family members who are constantly asking us for money. You got friends who need to call you at certain times of the night or at certain times of the day, and they're talking about a bad relationship or stuff that they got going on. That stuff ends up in my mind being equated to external static.
That's definitely the case. And I know we've both, when we've been working together, we've had some static show up right in the boardroom when we weren't even expecting it to show up. It just kind of threw us off our game for a minute.
Yes.
You got a story, anything?
It dawns on me this, I can recall us, being in a meeting. I'm up giving a presentation, and it's common practice to kind of mute your phone or to put it on vibrate when you're in, executive level meetings or in any meeting for that matter, right? Phone just keeps going off, and I'm looking over there at KP, and I'm like, whose phone is that?
Whose phone is that?
And Keith is pointing at me, telling me it's my phone. And I'm like,
Ricky.
oh, Lord. Let me look on there. So we got this little eye contact thing going, and he mouths to me that it's a very close family member. So
yes.
I'm not going to out or embarrass someone, but it's a very close family member. Right. Those who were close to me probably knew who I'm referring to, but it's a very close family member. But it just dawned on me, and the need for them was probably serious, but the timing of it probably couldn't be worse.
Exactly.
For me.
Exactly.
And most times when I'm getting these phone calls, whether it be from family members or for our listeners, if you're getting a call from one of your friends, they're in a bad relationship, in your mind, you're saying to yourself, just do something about it.
Yes.
Or can you please be proactive and not put yourself in situations like this, right? So
like that.
So again, I look at my situation, when I get phone calls from a family member or a close friend or something like that, and it's continuously one of those situations, it puts me in the mind of a song that I probably didn't really quite understand when I was younger, that I understand wholeheartedly now.
And what is that?
The Grandmaster Flash, when they would say,
there you go.
Don't push me because I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. That's exactly what it becomes like. I mean, depending on when you purchased your home, if you own a home, you may have an extremely high mortgage. You know, depending on where you live, your rent may be super high. You know, you may have credit card debt. You may have all of these things.
All these things that are going on.
And let's say if you're in a bad relationship or a bad marriage and you guys are arguing in the evening, all of that time that you're spending worried or concerned about those items ends up being issues or reasons or rationale why you can't be your 100% best self.
That's right, for sure. And I mean, I know we've talked about this where you got all of these people depending on you because you done made it. You done made it. You got the best job.
Right.
You getting paid. You got all this nice stuff.
You got weekends off.
Exactly.
And they think because you got a title next to the name that you sit around and do nothing.
But just order people around.
Right.
And you just sitting on your ass doing nothing.
Right.
But at the same time, because you're doing nothing, we can jump when you got a crisis going on and we have to be there to solve it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's sad reality.
Sad reality.
Yeah, sad reality.
Sad reality. And the thing is, I mean, the dilemma, especially for women and people of color, you know, we deal with a lot of stuff outside of work, whether it's family obligations, whether it's kind of societal pressures, some of the structural just norms that are out there that we have to deal with. And that all just impacts us very differently with our jobs and our careers.
And reality is some of us deal with stress differently.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you kind of accompany the stuff that you got going on every day, and then you got Joe or Jane Boss coming at you on some nonsense, you know, like one of the best movies ever made, Office Space, and they were talking about the TPS reports.
Yes.
You come to me talking about the TPS reports, you know, or you coming to me saying, I'm not wearing enough flair.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't really know what I kind of got going on
outside of here. That's right.
So it creates a bit of a tone deaf type of a deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because your boss is coming at you crazy. They don't know enough about you to figure out how to kind of manage that. And people are like, oh, well, you need to just block that out and be your best.
And
it sounds good in theory. But in reality, there's some consequences.
There's definitely some consequences of that. And, you know, you think about some of the impact that can have just dealing with all this outside stuff and some of the impacts that it could have. You may even make bad choices around your career because there's an extra pressure there of having to financially and mentally be there, you know, for all of these folks that you may make decisions that compromise your career because you're like, I just need a steady paycheck.
Right.
So that I can help take care of all this stuff when it comes up. And you kind of put yourself in, you know, on pause.
Right.
You know, just dealing with that. Right.
Or like from an HR standpoint. And look, I'm fully aware, and maybe our listeners don't, you know, understand or aren't necessarily aware of like some of the pieces here in terms of like African Americans have a higher rate of unemployment and poverty, lesser rates of home ownership. I mean, we have friends and family who've rented all their life. And haven't even really thought about ownership because it seems so far-fetched.
They can't get there. That's
right. And, you know, and then we think about like a higher inability to see a doctor.
That's
all
right.
of these
can't
things,
afford health care.
All of these things are supremely important. But as we're thinking through, when you have some of these, as we're thinking about the impact, you have some of these factors that come into play. And from an HR standpoint, or even Keith, you as a leader of people, you may or may not ask you know, one of your ask one of your subordinates to take on a stretch opportunity because you know they can't really do it because they got too much extra stuff going on.
That's true.
Or you as an employee may not raise your hand for an extra assignment.
Right.
Because you know you
can't
got
do
some
it right
extra
now.
stuff
You just
going
got all the stuff going on.
Right. And if you turn down that assignment or you turn down a number of assignments, they're going to stop coming your way.
Absolutely. And eventually you're just going to find yourself as an individual contributor,
right,
getting that 3% raise.
If that,
and then you're going to be mad.
Right.
At some point.
I mean, and let's not even like, we mentioned the higher inability to see a doctor. I mean, this stuff ends up being stressful.
Yes. It does impact your health.
Stressful,
That's
right? And you think and especially if we're talking about cultures where going to get you some help is frowned upon or looked upon as weak, There's so many
different dynamics
things that can kind of come up here. So we're talking through the impact, here that can happen. And we'll go, into maybe more depth shortly. But, when we're thinking through like, moral of the story, for our listeners, like how would you sum it up?
Ricky, in listening to our stories and our conversations so far, the moral for me is that people of color and women have to deal with big stressors in their lives that we should all be sensitive to. And for those folks who are people of color or women, you need to make sure that you recognize and deal with those issues before it cripples your career.
Let me go just into a little bit more detail as I kind of speak to you about a situation or scenario that involved me. Yeah. And we're talking now the realities of like mental health and, some of these other things that cause, stress. And, I'm a child of the 70s. Yep. Okay. So it was strong black man, and not showing any signs of weakness. And I'll tell you, in the earlier part of my career, and I will say basically for 30 plus years of my life, I've been pretty much kind of taking care of my family.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not the oldest.
That's right.
I'm not the oldest. I'm not the first grandkid. Okay. Like I've been kind of, that person, whether it be financially, whether it be mentally. So that takes a hold on you. But what happens is what I realized is I didn't have anybody to really talk to. Everyone had somebody that they could call.
Somebody else to rely on.
It was 1-800
but no one had
Ricky.
your experience.
Exactly. So it was 1-800 call Ricky, and then I realized that I gravitated towards friends who probably had some of the same experiences, but even in relationships, I probably gravitated towards people who needed help.
Yes.
I didn't want to be in that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
But you're just constant fixer, so you just navigate that way to fix stuff.
That's exactly what it is. But it wasn't until I feel like it probably cost me, it made me consider, harming myself, trying to get away from this, trying to find another way to look at things. And not embarrassed to talk about it because I got help.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about utilizing your employee assistance program or utilizing whatever resources that are available to you. As I actually did that, and it wasn't until in your mind, that this shit ain't right.
Right.
In your mind,
you know it.
They shouldn't be calling me every time. I shouldn't have to deal with this today. Run over to the.
But there's a guilt factor associated with that too. You feel guilty because you have made it.
Right. Yeah, to some degree.
Right.
To them, they think you're at the pinnacle.
You at the pinnacle.
And you've
done
us,
everything they wanted to do.
And being in this corporate blender, here, you realize there's other things that you want to do.
Absolutely.
So you got to try to separate, things here. And I'm not trained for this. I wasn't trained to do this. I do human research. I feel like I joke around when people say I'm a psychologist for corporate America. But I can't walk around there being weak. No. I can't walk around there.
No, not at all.
Have an issue. So my life changed when I went and got me some help. I enlisted in some talk therapy. I did those things. Like that's when things kind of changed for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I would say bringing this kind of full circle when we talk about like the impact or even like the moral to the story when we say everybody is dealing with some shit. Mm-hmm. Everybody is dealing with it.
Everybody is. That's
people just deal with it differently.
And
people just show it differently.
People show it differently. That's right. But all of this stuff has impacts. I mean, like you were just talking about, the mental and psychological distress that this can cause, the relationship issues that you can have, the financial distress.
So again, this is what we're talking about when you don't deal
with this stuff. I mean, this is like, it's crazy, the impact on your health. And then that's just outside of the job. Then you put it in the job where your performance starts to suck. You may get demoted.
Right.
You may, be on a performance improvement plan. You may even lose your damn job because all this other static is going on outside.
Then you're thinking about opportunities that may present themselves. So Keith, you just heard me having a conversation with one of my mentees for years here where I realized her current work situation might not be what she wants it to be.
Right.
And at the end of the day, when we talk about victims, like we're talking about someone who's making some really good money, working for a really good organization, someone who's maximized her potential. But at the end of the day, if you don't deal with what's upsetting you, you kind of go into the next experience
bitter.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a lot of times people say like you're in a bit of a battered syndrome where you're expecting something to go wrong, or you have this monkey on your shoulder, or this black or gray cloud over you, and it kind of comes across in your demeanor. It comes across when you interview. It does those things. So again, when we're thinking through the potential negative outcomes, if you don't handle these situations, it's real.
It's real.
It's real.
It's real.
I mean, how many jobs have you potentially lost, or relationships have you gone through, or poor financial decisions, as you were speaking to before, have you made, or even times when you probably could have done a little bit better and you didn't at the job, where was a direct correlation between how well you can do and this extra static or shit that's going on.
No, totally. And it has an impact. I can remember a story. I mean, everybody knows about the economic collapse in 2007, 2008, right? I'm in a kick-ass job. I'm making very good money, but my family was totally impacted by the crisis, right? You know, stuff just went belly up.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one that has steady income, steady job.
We're not saying rich. We're saying steady.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm fine. You know, everything's good, but it wasn't like, you know,
balling.
I'm like balling or anything, you know. So all of a sudden it's like mortgage has to be paid. Yeah. Lights need to stay on, need food on the table.
And I
gotta pay all of this stuff.
I don't need it in 2 months. I needed it 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, already late behind, months behind.
I need you to
which is a whole different story.
I need you to Western Union.
Right. It's like, why didn't you tell me when it started, as opposed now you're 5 months behind.
Right.
So very, very quickly, my life changed with all the external static that you're dealing with. And very quickly, you can start to see checking account and everything else coming down, right? And it's like that. No one at work would ever know that I was dealing with all of that stuff, but it definitely had impact on how I was performing, because I couldn't focus and concentrate because I'm constantly on the phone with family members, helping them scramble and talking to their creditors and, you know, all this other stuff, trying to help them dig out of a hole, as opposed to focusing on being CFO.
Right. Exactly.
Right now.
But again, as we're saying, it was your job to do a good job at your job, right? But the expectation was for you to take care of everybody else.
Right. I'm just making enough money to take care of myself.
Right. Well, when you went to, and I get it. I totally get, like in some cultures, it's if your kid makes it to be a professional athlete, we all made it.
We all made it, right.
But me and you, or people who are like us, or even some of our listeners, going pro is you getting that good job.
Right. That's exactly right.
That's going pro.
That's right. Because we both made more money than our parents ever made combined.
Absolutely.
You know, 2 or 3 jobs in.
Right.
So all of a sudden, like, we rich.
Right. And again, I won't actually speak to the guilt piece here when we talk about taking nice vacations.
Right.
Or we're talking about doing something nice at your home that you've been
have a nice party or whatever.
Then it's like, oh, he got it.
He rich.
Yeah. Oh, you gonna do this, but you won't help me. Like, no one's thinking about all of the other stuff. But again, the point in this is, as we speak to you as listeners, we get it. Like we absolutely understand this because we've been through it. Some of your superiors or your bosses, they may not understand.
They may not understand it.
You know, they may not understand this. But, you know, as we're thinking about this, and again, some of our listeners might say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have never been in a situation like this. And what I will say to you is that's great. Good for you.
Good for you.
And
I don't believe it, but good for you.
But these situations exist, and you may be a leader of people, and this may make you spend a little bit more time getting to know your employees and what they're dealing with, so that you can be a little bit more mindful on your requirements or expectations, or that you can be a little bit more empathetic.
Absolutely.
You know, at times. And the other piece of this is, as we're talking about this, again, maybe you haven't gone through it. Totally cool. That doesn't mean you will never.
That's right.
You know, go through it. So it's good to maybe get you some information. But as I'm thinking through this now, I'm just thinking, Again, we got people who think maybe we might be just putting something extra on this, or this is just for the listeners. This is not scripted. We're just talking as we're thinking about it. But, this is a section or a segment where we like to kind of transition to, where for those who may not believe or those who need some extra input, this is the part where we talk about these receipts. We talk about the stats, So, Keith, why don't you hit us with some receipts, man? Let us know, why is this serious?
Before diving into the specific statistics, I just wanted to point out that I'll focus basically on how all of this external static has a huge impact on your health and your wealth. And this is particularly pervasive, as you'll see, for people of color and single parents who deal with an inordinate amount of external static, which is both systemic and cultural. Just talking about some of this stuff, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, puts out a lot of stats on different things about economics and health disparities and things like that. And just thinking about households, 67% of African Americans live in a single parent family.
67%.
Versus 25% for white folks and 42% for Hispanics.
I know this is off subject just a little bit here, but how many people live in the United States?
Yeah, roughly, we'll call it 300 million.
300 million. Okay, so
12% are African American.
Right.
Yeah. So
okay. So a
little over 30 million people.
Yeah. Oh, so out of that 12% who are African American, 67% of those live in single
parent homes.
Big.
And you think about all the issues that you deal with as a single parent.
Yep.
When it comes to childcare, when it becomes being the sole provider and, having to, pay all the bills, all the things.
And
that
maybe
you have
not
to
even
do.
living in the most affluent neighborhoods.
Maybe not living in most affluent neighborhoods, doing, medical care. All of those things have a huge impact. And, just speaking of the childcare part of it, the Center for American Progress put out a survey. Do you realize, Ricky, that if you want to put your kid in like kinder care or somewhere like that, that costs like $1,200 a month on average. And if you have somebody just coming to your house, a babysitter, if you're really paying them, that's like $800 a month on average. So when you have bills
you're
like that,
already in the hole. You're already in the hole. Now you have another
to starting out, right?
A decision that's a livelihood decision here.
Right. I mean, that's another mortgage payment, another, rent payment that you're doing every month. And you're the sole provider on top of that. Something goes belly up, it's lights out, like real fast. And I think something that's really key for people to understand, just to kind of build on this economic piece of the message, is Federal Reserve did a study. White families have 10 times more net worth than a black family. Jeez. So the average net worth of a white family is $171,000. Black folks, $17,000 net worth. So
so when you
there
think
is
about,
no safety net.
Right. So this in itself, I got to be honest with you, this is stressful listening to this. Like this is stressful listening to this.
That's right.
Like so when you think about what our parents had to go through to make ends meet and to be able to provide for us, and the choice that you make when you say, hey, I don't want to go to school, or hey, I'm not going to vote, all that stuff really matters at the end
all
of
of it
the
matters.
day.
That's
it
right.
matters at the end of the day. So this is stressful listening, to
just
it.
Listening to it.
Because it lets you know, like, you get a warped sense of reality if you're watching videos on TV, if you're listening to music, people talking about what they have and this, that, and the other, because it's really not reality.
It's really not reality. That's right.
Yeah, it's just dream world.
That's right. It's glorified. And just to build on that net worth thing, it's not just that it's 10 times for white folks versus black folks. That's $17,000. 1 in 5 black families have zero or negative net worth.
In the red.
In the red. Living in the red constantly. Right. So you just think about the stress of that.
Yeah.
And then having to come to work with all of that stress on top of you, and how that impacts your performance and your ability to move. It's huge.
Yeah. So I'm thinking through something that I, looked at is one of the major factors as you're talking about zero to negative net worth. I'm thinking through, like, white households typically are older and more highly educated, more likely to have received an inheritance, less likely to be headed by a single parent, or more likely to have a home and equity, and less likely to have student loan debt.
Student loan debt.
I mean,
that's right. Because Black people, Hispanic people, you can't even save. There's all those great plans where you can start putting money away when your kid is born, and by the time they get, the high school.
But there's nothing to save. Like if you don't have anything to
That's
save.
right. You got negative net worth. They ain't nothing to save.
People are
paying two mortgage payments between rent and childcare. There's nothing to save.
Right.
You don't have an inheritance to pull on.
And we're not talking about once your kids finish preschool and all of that and going to a private school.
Right.
I mean, there's another piece on how all of that stuff happens. But again, I guess when we're starting to, when we, bring it back to these receipts that, make it extremely important. When we're talking about moral to the story is this shit is real.
It's real.
And the static that we have to deal with is real. And there are reasons. This is not an excuse.
It's not an excuse.
There are reasons why we don't traditionally perform as well as we can, and we have to break that stereotype.
Absolutely.
Like we absolutely have to break that cycle.
Yep.
I don't care what's going on with the government, everything else.
All
like we have to do the stuff that we need to do. So I'm thinking through, like, in your mind, what are like some good tidbits or secrets that you can provide to our listeners in terms of how to deal with like these experiences if they have them right now?
Before we dive in, I'll just summarize the 3 secrets that we'll share with you today. First secret, set boundaries. Secondly, make sure that you get help. And thirdly, be sure to tell your boss or an HR representative what's going on. When I was thinking about your situation and the situations I've dealt with when my family was going through financial crisis, for yourself, especially when you're at work, you have to set some boundaries. And I realized I needed to do that with my family. It's like, look, between these hours, you can't call me.
My job. You remember what it was like when you used to call your mom when you got out of school?
Yes.
On some BS. You and your brothers or your sisters over fighting
and you
over
get
the
cussed
TV.
out.
And I can remember my mother saying, I'm at my job, boy. What is it?
What is it?
Like, you going to make me get fired or lose my job. If I lose my job, it's going to be like this. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, I was just trying to,
yes,
nothing. It was really nothing important.
Exactly.
But again, you're right. Setting those boundaries.
And it's like, I'm working. So if it's a real emergency, this is what you do.
Absolutely.
So I know.
Yep.
If it's a real emergency, or you just calling for some BS, or you just forgot the time zone change, or whatever the case may be, right? But you have to set those boundaries, because otherwise it could cause you to lose focus and impact your performance.
Yeah, I think the other thing is like, do you actually have to answer the phone every time it rings?
Nope. Not at all.
Leave a text message and tell me what you're requesting.
Exactly.
Or leave a voicemail I can check it.
Yes.
And give me the opportunity to choose
how I respond.
Whether I'm going to call you right back, or we're going to do this later, or this, that, and the other. But again, setting those boundaries is, I get it. At the end of the day, things happen, and you may have made a not so wise or a poor decision, but that does not constitute an emergency on my part.
On my part. That's right. Absolutely.
And it's hard.
And I always tell
sounds.
people, hey, your lack of preparation and planning don't cause an emergency for me.
And we have to do better with this survivor's remorse, trying to look. I did what I was supposed to do, and I get it, and I'm going to help where I can, but I'm not obligated. I'm not obligated.
That's exactly right.
And
that's it's a real tough thing to get through. I mean, it's taken me many, many years to get through that, but you have to do that as well.
Absolutely. Like the other thing I'll say from an HR point of view perspective, it's, you got to get the help, man. I'm telling you, that saved my life, and that changed the course of my performance at work.
Sure.
And it, look, I may be viewed as the jerk within my family sometimes, or Ricky's trying to be somebody's boss or somebody's daddy. But at the end of the day, I got to do what I got to do to survive,
Absolutely.
and I know I got a family to take care of. So when I provide for you, I'm taking out of my own family's mouth.
Yep.
I'm sacrificing so that you can have, other shit. So what I would say is, you got to get that help, man. Like, if there's, I would say most, if not all, of our organizations that we work for have an employee assistance program.
Yep.
EAP.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And use it. It's free.
You pay into it already.
You pay into it. It's part of your benefit.
Right. So use that. I would say if you have like a spiritual leader or something like that you speak to, talk to them. This is what they're supposed to do. I think the most important piece though is, depending on the size of your organization, how long you've been there, you qualify for family medical leave if you need to take that. Some time off. I would say look into it. Yeah. If you don't want to take like a lot of that time off, like continuously, look up intermittent FMLA.
Yep.
I was able to get help on a very regular basis, whether it be every week or every other week, for an hour. I would take a little extra time at lunch and I would go talk to my therapist.
There you go.
And I would come on back in there ready to rock.
Mm-hmm. And it brings up another good point, talking about the receipts again, is this whole stigma that the African American community in particular have around getting mental health help, right? And there was a study that's from the Health and Human Services that just said, in general, African American adults are 20% more likely to report having serious, distressful issues going on in their life versus white folks, but are less likely to seek actual help due to the stigma or their lack of access to healthcare. We just gonna deal with it. I'm just gonna deal with it. Now, we already talked about the disparities with healthcare, with education, with housing, like all of that in general. And whatever logic it is, and we'll talk about it, but we won't do shit about it. Yeah. Whatever logic it is, we feel like we got the resources to deal with it on our own. Yes. Versus going to get some help. Mm-hmm. But the facts tell us otherwise. The facts tell us otherwise. I think the other thing that's important, especially given that, is you got to be transparent, with your boss. If you got an issue or something like that, talk to your boss, talk to some colleagues. I would say it's okay to talk to your friends, but don't be careful about just venting without having a plan of action or being able to take the next step to be able to kind of take care of those things. I would say ask your HR rep or talk to them about what you're going through and ask them about resources that can potentially help you. Absolutely. You just got to read the room. At the end of the day, you got to read the room. But if it's your job, your livelihood is on the line, I don't think there's a choice. There's not a choice. It's a must. That's right. You got to talk about it. There is no guarantee that as bad as you might feel about the job that you have and you're like, I need to leave, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to get another one. That's for sure. And if your boss or HR person has even an ounce or drop of empathy, they'll get it. Right. And they'll be willing to work with you for a while, as long as you're continuing to make progress and perform, et cetera, as long as they know what's going on. Right. That's the thing. If I don't know, I can't do anything about it. I can't help you. Right. I agree. So I think as I'm kind of closing out with my thoughts today, I think that, again, me sharing what's going on in my life, I know, Keith, you sharing on like what has happened in your world also. I think that at the end of the day, we both agree and realize this is serious. It's serious. The reason that we're talking about it now is because a lot of people don't talk about it. So we want to make sure that just like I got help, and I'm not saying I'm perfect and I'm cured or solved, because I still get calls today. Still work at it. That's right. But it's a work in progress, and you have to do some of the things that we talked about during this session, today. So what I want to say is, again, man, thanks for having a open forum for me to be able to talk about it. And again, I hope that our listeners, that this kind of resonates with them. And what I will say is, this is what you get on C-CRETS. There you go. This is what we all about. Yeah, this is it. This is what you get on C-CRETS. So we're going to go ahead and close it out today because my cup is low. There is no more ice in this cup. Ice is melted. So we got to do something about that, Ricky. Right. So, hey, again, we appreciate you as listeners, and just keep tuning in. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you all for listening today. Hopefully you gained a secret or two that can be applied as your journey continues. If you are motivated and excited after listening to Keith and Ricky, please subscribe to our podcast, share with friends, and donate via Patreon. Check us out at www.C-CRETS.com to get more information about our secret services. Until next time, cheers!